Hey everyone! Welcome to the Party
Ooh.
Chat People's Podcast, and I'm back. I know you missed me. Everyone
He's
missed me, right?
back.
We did
Yes,
miss you,
we
Steve.
missed you.
Everyone missed me.
Yeah.
The
Joined
Steve
by Mikey,
Machine.
Zavi, and Stacy. My friends, how have you been?
We are the Party Chat Peoples. We
Would
are
you
back.
guys be
The Party
interested?
Chat People.
Following that, would you be interested in talking about some video game things?
I
Always
definitely
and
want to talk
forever.
about some video games.
Always and forever. I like
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Sounds
Cool.
Until I quit video games.
Never.
good.
Never. All right. So today's topics, everybody. We are
Turtles.
back. We are going to get into the PS5 event headed up by Stacy. Find out what we liked, what they didn't like, what we liked about the design, and any pricing. I'm going to finally reveal the curtain behind Persona 5 Royal, give my overall thoughts, and sort of give some little beads on what happens in the extra semester, but I don't want to spoil it because I do know that Zavi wants to play it and any of our listeners that want to play it. And Steve is going to talk about Destiny 2 Beyond Light.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
He's
But I
back
was
and he's
coming with
talking
new
about
stuff.
Destiny. He made up with his old girlfriend.
Exactly.
You know what? And that's why he's back. Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Destiny 2
Yeah.
Beyond Light and the Future, they announced two expansions all the way up to 2022. And we are going to close out this episode talking about The Last of Us Remastered. Not 2 yet. We're
Not
going to give
yet.
ourselves some time to play through 2, and we're going to have a full discussion of that in the coming weeks. But we're just going to find out how. Oh yeah, so yeah, definitely spoilers on the last.
Spoilers
Last
for
of Us
the
Remastered.
If
first
you
game.
haven't played it in the 7 years it's been out.
Yes.
Yes.
But also,
Yes.
I do want to say that like I'm going to talk about the first game and how it fits thematically. So while I like haven't necessarily played much of part 2, I have played some, and I don't want to claim that it's possible for me to just speak like about the first one without giving people any hints as to my emotional state after playing some hours of part 2. So some people who are psychopaths, you might not want to listen to it.
Broken.
Oh jeez. Okay.
Well, I'm like that, so I'm calling myself a psychopath.
Spoilers,
Okay.
my emotional state is broken.
Oh, yeah.
That's
It has
reasonable
nothing-
right
It
now.
has nothing to do with The Last of Us, though.
Cool.
And that's one of the things I want to talk about, like in relation to, if you don't mind me guys just leaping off with it, this PlayStation 5 reveal.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the biggest reveal from it?
What was that?
Grand Theft
Grand Theft Auto 5?
Oh my
wow.
God! Exactly. That's
Oh my
that's
god,
exactly
I
what we're
can't
talking about.
wait.
So
What a terrible lead-in.
Opener. Yeah.
Lead-in.
Terrible opener. Yes.
Oh god, it was so bad.
yeah, so I'm changing my virtual background to the PlayStation 5 stuff in case you haven't seen it. The controller had been linked at least like a week or two before. The console is quite large.
Yeah.
And the version you see here with the little line in it for the disc, there
Tilt
are
your
two
head to the
versions
side.
of it.
Other way.
So there
Other
are,
way.
yeah.
You gotta Vanna White it.
There we
Anyway,
go.
There you go.
So there's a version with the disc and a version without, and I'm sure the one with is going to be more expensive. That's the only thing I'm really wanting to point out. And they have a fancy headset and a camera and stuff like that.
We've
As
had some
I-
more somewhat leaks on pricing since the
Yeah,
PS5
there has been. But I also do really like the aesthetic they're going for because it fits right in line with the PSVR when that came out.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
So
it does
they're
look.
doing the white
yeah.
and black
It looks
contrast
nice.
aesthetic, and I
Yeah.
really like that all the accessories go that route with it.
I think
Yeah,
it looks
yeah.
good. I think that it may be big, but whatever. I think that people obsess over like the way thing will look in a way that I just don't understand for a gaming console. Like they
Yeah.
tried to do the whole like Apple porn, like look at the sleek edges, and it's just like this
Well,
thing
and you
stays
saw that with
underneath your
PlayStation.
TV.
Exactly,
had
and you're not
something
gonna
like-
move it. Yeah.
They had like something like 20 little graphical things to show on the screen that were some version of the PlayStation.
Oh, yeah,
like
the
the
symbols,
X, triangle, square, and
Mhm.
circle.
There was a joke on the internet that they were gonna obviously the big reveal was gonna be a fifth button and it was gonna be a star.
Yeah, and
So-
that would have
That's a
made the
great-
whole thing hilarious, and like they knew what they were doing. Instead, it just felt like they were filling time because the graphics guys got a little out of hand and
To
wanted
some
to pay
extent,
for all their
to some
work.
extent, I'm
graphics
cool
guys.
with to some extent, I'm cool with them. Like, I'm cool with them treating this as like a celebration of PlayStation, all
I
that
mean,
stuff. That's
and
mostly okay.
yes and no, because the thing is, the reveal is happening in a pretty unusual period of time.
And
where
to their credit, they did push it back a little bit to allow for protests to take more air.
So the one thing I have
Sure.
with the way they always show off the PlayStation is that it's always in its vertical standing mode.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
And
gonna lie.
nobody's gonna do that at
90%
home.
of people put this thing under the TV on a TV stand,
Yeah.
flat on its side. Show me that.
However, I have to
then
be
it doesn't-
honest. I
Then it doesn't
stood up
look
my
like an
Xbox
erection,
360.
Steve, if you
I
don't
had
put
my
it up.
XM.
So
I stood up my
I-
PlayStation 2 because I had to pitch
Yeah.
it between my two TVs.
Oh,
I had a
me.
no. It was not some
Whatever,
fancy
man.
shit. I had a tiny CRT and a
Oh.
strangely large CRT. The tiny CRT was for cable, so that I could watch cable bullshit while also playing video games.
Oh, wow.
It just goes to
It was
tell you
all
something.
hand-me-down shit.
But
Never
We
once
didn't
have
buy
I
any of
seen
that.
Regardless
a
of that,
console
so
vertically.
and a PlayStation reveal coming around in that era, that is more or less, look at our shiny new console and all the fun games, many of which are sequels to games you know and love, would have come across a certain way at that time. And what it feels like is they just went ahead and repeated the playbook again. Right?
Yeah.
So the first thing out was GTA 5, which isn't coming out until 2021. And all they can tell you is that they're going to give you $1 million in the PS4 version every month until
In-game money.
in-game money. Yeah, so
I'm
you
sorry, that works for me. I play GTA Online.
get see, and
The
I get
dopamine slot machine works.
and I get that for the people that play that game, that might be exciting. Okay, anyway, but to lead with that felt really weird in the era of coronavirus,
Yeah.
in the era of Black Lives Matter. Like, that's what you're leading with.
In the event
It's an
of
Particularly
extra, an
because-
extra million in-game dollars in GTA 5.
specifically
particularly
because that every year we see something from Bethesda, they launch Skyrim on a new platform in some way.
It felt like that.
Shit
That's
on them
true.
every time.
That's true.
And
And
here
it's
comes
exciting
Rockstar
again.
now doing
And
the same
The
thing.
thing is, like, a little bit of like credit is deserved to Rockstar for like doing live service games that seem sustainable and all
Yeah.
that. Like, that's, you know, impressive
Yeah,
and all that.
it's not
But
nothing.
the thing about it is, it wasn't just like the actual content wasn't just like GTA 5 or GTA Online. It was like the story of GTA 5,
Yeah.
which is just the worst fucking humans I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like I'm trapped in a neighborhood and not seeing my friends and family on a regular basis.
Right.
Like,
right.
if I wanted that shit, I'd watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, I guess. Like, I just it's so annoying. But anyway.
And meanwhile, I'm changing my background again.
I like to rob
they've
banks.
got this guy.
Ooh,
They could have
yeah.
led with this guy. Look how good this image looks. This is in game right here.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody loved the Spider-Man game. People who don't play
Yeah.
video games much love the
Yeah.
Spider-Man game.
It was such a wasted
this is out-
opportunity.
This
Yeah.
is out by the holidays this year.
Exactly.
How did they not lead with this?
Yeah.
What's wrong
Yeah.
with that?
But
Going
then when
on
you
the
think, when you
from the
think about it,
momentum
if
and
you
everything.
look at how that was structured, if they just inserted GTA 5 into the middle, it would have been not
It
talked
might have been
about at
worse.
all.
And here's the
No
thing.
one
here's
would
the
have said
thing.
anything about it.
What
and now
happened,
here we are, is everyone is talking about it. So it's
what
kind of like
happened
a
was Rockstar / Take-Two paid a lot of money for that, period. That's
Sure.
It
what
is.
happened.
but it's
For
also
sure.
it's a bad press is press is press. Not like
Yeah.
there's a bad.
Yeah.
news, That's the
Yeah.
kind of thing that
We're talking about it for far too long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
talked about it for a minute. So
Well, okay. So, meanwhile, again, a lot of what they showed was a whole bunch of games, and many of them are sequels, but in some cases with some good twists. But I don't know how much we need to see Madden NFL 21, NBA 2K 21, Gran Turismo 7. Yes, they're
I
very
like Gran
pretty.
Turismo.
And at
Gran
least with
Turismo
that
fits.
one, they had some additional features that made it look like they've actually progressed with the game.
But
and it was
Yeah, but I
something.
say that
That was
because
something.
Gran Turismo has always been kind of like their flagship graphics kind of thing.
Yeah.
The same way Forza is
Yeah.
always something for Xbox, because it's the thing
Right.
where, like, it's easy to make car games look really good because there's not a ton of shit going on at any given point in time. So
Yeah.
you can get all these really sleek angles and nice ray tracing now that they're doing.
And
Ray
the
tracing.
interiors have been very immaculately reproduced from the real thing.
Well, they do. They
Right.
like
I know.
laser scan them to the
But-
point where it's like completely accurate to where the car is, which is why like the racing games are in there.
Mhm.
Then you see the sports games because those are money makers too. I mean, what does everybody buy every year?
Yeah,
Right.
it's
right.
important for them to put that stuff out there from the perspective
Right.
of like there are people who buy a PS4 or a console, and that is the 1 or 2 games they buy ever, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So let me just continue on if you guys don't mind. I want to keep it reasonably short. My point is it's okay to have some old games, especially when you're doing something new and different with them. Horizon Zero Dawn looks amazing. That's real. Oddworld Soulstorm had a really interesting twist on their mechanics,
Yeah.
and the fact that it's got this cool revolutionary spirit feels more of this moment
Yeah.
than most of the other games that they were showing.
Yeah.
But I also want to share my screen for a minute, and give me just a second. So I'm still figuring out how to best do this, but we're gonna
It's
not
bug
share sound
snacks.
so we can continue to talk over it. And I'm gonna show you. So this one was the one that really caught my eye. It's called Deathloop, and you take sort of a sci-fi noir world, and then you add this great time travel and this super cool looking style.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me get to, I'm just going to fast forward a bit to what looks like some gameplay, I think. Even the gameplay just looks really pretty and really cool. And this kind of came out of nowhere for me.
Ooh. You know, I
And
didn't see the real-time trailer. I only saw the in-game from like the actual
Yeah, this is
press
slightly
conference.
different footage from
Yeah,
the.
yeah. I actually haven't seen this, Stacy.
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah, so I mean, that looks really great. And this is one Pragmata, right? So it's from Capcom. It's just so weird that it's impossible to guess what's going on with this game. So here's
Sounds like
somebody
Yeah,
Capcom.
I
in Times
genuinely
Square
was
where I
watching
work.
this.
So
I
this,
genuinely thought to myself like, this looks like some Kojima shit.
Kojima shit. Yeah.
it really does. And and yet it's got a certain sort of comfortable stereotypeness to it, even at the point where it's like perplexing in terms of like what is happening, what is this technology, and why do we feel like we need to save this little white girl with a virtual cat?
Virtual
Like,
cat.
what is happening? There
Well,
are
I
a
will
lot
say,
of
you know,
cats in
let's think
this
about what
thing.
Capcom has done as far as original IP in some time. And the only thing I can really think back to is like Lost Planet.
Yeah,
Like as far as like
right.
original, like big IP.
And
So
that's like a
Yeah,
historical Capcom problem. But the thing is,
yeah.
they do occasionally try some shit. They
No,
sure.
don't
and it
always
Yeah,
they don't
works.
always succeed, but they tried Killer
they try.
Le-
7. They
Everyone
tried.
loved Lost Planet. They didn't handle it nicely, but I
Yeah.
mean, the original Lost
So
Bug
Planet was
snacks.
fantastic.
So yeah, Bug
Oh boy.
Snacks is, you want to talk about a diversity of game styles?
Yeah.
Literally every snack you could ever eat is turned into a bug. And
Ah.
if you eat the bug, your own body parts turn into that snack.
I
So
want
this guy
hot dog
is
ears.
clearly eating hot dogs and cinnamon rolls.
It's bug snacks.
It's just so strange.
Jesus,
Yeah,
your
It's
it is
timing
so
strange.
changed.
weird.
That was great.
But it's
So
so
Watch
I
that
so
100
wacky that
times.
you gotta love it. And meanwhile, like the nicest looking game in some ways was Ratchet and Clank. It's
Oh
like,
That was a
yeah,
what
great
is
I'm
demo.
a
that
huge,
always
a
huge
looks
great
fan.
good.
demo?
Huge
It gave
fan.
Ratchet and
you
Clank is
I
always
probably
good.
haven't seen. I'm
it
not
gave
even
you
gonna
a
show
great
it, but
sense.
go
It
look
gave
at
you a
it.
great sense of the gameplay, and it also
Yeah,
showed off their technology for
Right.
loading in things really fast because of
Yeah.
the
yeah. That
portal
the like
mechanic.
the portal tearing and
Right.
I don't know. Did you mention Little Devil Inside, Stacy? Did you get
No, I
around to that?
didn't, but that's another really good
Oh
one
yeah,
I don't
that
for
remember that
one.
one.
sure. Yeah, so it felt like to me some of the more interesting games that are coming out sooner were just sandwiched in between PlayStation graphics or
Hmm.
sequels.
Hmm.
Like Hitman were given a lot more time, even though they don't appear to be doing anything particularly new and
Yeah.
interesting. And
Mm.
the whole what's going on in the world was completely ignored. And I just want to take a minute to talk about that because people are evaluating brands in a different way right now. There's very much a you are with us or you are not sense about a lot of brands, and employees are actively revolting within companies if they're saying the right things in public but doing the wrong things in
And
private.
some people are getting pissed at Steam too, some developers for
For
not saying
sure.
anything while
Exactly.
Epic Game Store and
and
others
and
have.
Sony hasn't not said anything, but they are in a weird position. Like they make a lot of their money off of movies, and who knows when those theaters are going to reopen or how they're going to do it safely or how that's going to pan out. Right
Mm.
now, there's a big debate over whether to require masks when they reopen theaters, and I don't know how that's going to turn out. But it does make them, I think, hesitant to weigh in on the situation in too much of a way that might alienate some of their customers.
Yeah, and they also from a gaming perspective want to probably the safer play is to just present it as escapism, because that's what a lot of people might want right now. I do
And
think they alluded slightly to the situation with the developer video at the very end. They did
right,
the kind of mosaic
yes.
style that we've seen in a lot of COVID-19 kind of
And that's
video.
the one thing I think they did right, but it was noticeable how much you had a diverse team in the final square of dozens of developers together, and how little you saw them speaking during the program up until that moment. Like, you can tell that that's something that they put together at the end, and they didn't even explain why they had done it or what they were trying to achieve with that. So I didn't love it. I would have much rather they had a more open admission of the times they are in, without even necessarily placing themselves anywhere on the spectrum of what if anything they're going to do about it, but just used it as a time to talk about how, if nothing else, hey, games are great escapism, and we're all stuck at home right now, and life outside's rough, but you can have a good old
Roughly,
time in Spider-Man. I don't
roughly
know.
speaking, I think what was missing was a human touch, which I didn't see
Yeah.
it, but it sounds like the Destiny 2 presentation did in fact have some of that from what we discussed briefly. So before we throw it over to Steve, though, I just want to briefly say that when the Horizon 2 trailer happened, Stacy can attest, I squealed like a little girl.
And then you teared up.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
I believe it.
Horizon.
Yeah.
They didn't put a date for that, right?
No,
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 okay.
but
All
there
right,
was a
so
large robot turtle, so that was
cool.
cool.
that was cool.
Cool.
I'm hoping
All
2021,
right.
but it's going to be what it is.
Cool, Steve. So take it away, Destiny. Where did Destiny's 2 conference succeed where Sony's failed?
Well, first of all, I mean, they did acknowledge what's going on. They didn't say a ton about it, but they acknowledged the fact that, like, hey, it's a weird time we're living in, and it is. It's a weird time. There's a lot of things going on that
I think
you
they
kind of want
acknowledge
to
it a little
escape.
bit good. Like the whole pre-intro, Steve, was like a whole, what is it? Just like, hey, here's the changes we had to do. Here's like we had to ship, equipment to this person's house, and people had to run to the office. They had like this whole mini montage, and then before it started, there was like an 8-minute and 46-second like sort of flash
Right.
screen.
So I got into the briefing late.
Oh
I
yeah, you
wasn't able.
missed
I
all.
didn't see
Yeah,
it,
okay,
but I
yeah.
did
So
see them
Steve,
touch on it.
yeah, there was a good like mini doc right before it, just saying like, here are all the challenges we had to go through to get this, and they had like so many like people just talking
Yeah.
about the challenges and everything. So they kind of front loaded it. So if you were waiting, they did cover it so that when they started talking about Destiny 2, that's all they really that got to focus on.
It's probably also because it was fresh off of their live event, and I waited an hour and a half for something to happen there, and it didn't. So I figured they'd start the actual reveal event late too.
Damn you, Bungie.
They tricked
So
you.
what I'm talking about there is like a couple of days before the actual event itself and the reveal of the new DLC stuff, there was a live event happening in game, because that's like the popular thing now. Like Fortnite does stuff like that. So I guess this was Bungie's first attempt at it. And basically, it was just kind of a cutscene that played out in real time within the tower, which is the main social space. So in the sky, you see the Almighty, and it's kind of just sitting there, and then you see lasers start going towards it, which is Rasputin trying to destroy it. And it was awesome for what it is. This big thing exploding in the sky and then coming crashing down behind the tower where you are.
That
right?
is pretty cool.
It was neat.
I'm waiting for the but.
Here it is. It took an hour and a half to get to anything meaningful happening.
So you guys are just waiting in the
Whoa.
tower.
Right. So the event was
watching
supposed to start
lasers.
at
Wait, so they're doing a digital event
So
and they
you could've-
imported all the bad parts of a live concert, waiting for
So
the
you
artists to
could've
stop
watched
doing
the
drugs and come
movie,
out.
Or you
So
could have
like I
waited to see this one
sat
thing
there
happen.
for like an hour and a half, and then it's like, oh, I think something's starting to happen, and you start seeing the lasers, and they grow slowly over time. And I understood what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it seem like it's playing out in real time, with how long it would take missiles fired from a different planet to reach something that's in orbit
Nobody's
around
expecting actual science in this science fiction.
Right.
Okay.
So if it happened, if it
I don't
took
know what you're
place,
talking about. All this stuff about light and dark, that's PhD shit.
if it took place within the 30 minutes that I expected it to
quarks
take place in, it would have been like,
Yeah.
it would have been mind blown. Great. But
Yeah.
it took a while.
I can see that working from a perspective of like trying to put you in a role play context of like being someone who's just on the station, and then it's just
Yeah.
like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but an hour is too long.
Well,
But then,
Respect
to
my
their
I
time.
feel
credit,
like you should have got a lecture about metachlorians
to their
during
credit,
some of that
though,
time.
like right after the event concluded, there was tweets from their like community manager and gameplay dev saying, "Look, we hear you, we understand. We're going to do better in the future."
Okay.
So it's good. They
Lessons
were listening.
learned. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
But then
That's
that leads
interesting.
Look,
into
when World of
the.
Warcraft started doing events, it was a freaking disaster.
It was a disaster.
At one point, they had a plague that you could infect major cities with and kill
Yeah, I
everyone.
remember that. I remember
I
that
mean,
one.
that was a
Actually
mistake.
did.
There were events where one person on the entire server could get the cool thing that everybody wanted. He could just kind of stick in and steal it while everybody else was doing more meaningful stuff outside. It was just
Yeah.
It's like, have they ever met a human being?
So they so that brings us into the actual event itself to go over the new expansion and what their future roadmap is. So the new expansion is called Beyond Light, which goes into this whole philosophy now that they've been teasing for the past few seasons of what if the darkness really isn't a bad guy, just an opposing force to the light, but we don't know the motives. So they've been teasing that for like the past couple of seasons, and now the darkness triangle ships have finally arrived.
And he said, I am here to kill your shit.
And basically at the end of the campaign was like, you don't need weapons here, we're your salvation. And offered kind of like this olive branch of like, we're going to help you.
Wait, this is the darkness speaking?
Do you trust
Darkness.
the darkness?
Well, it depends, because there was a whole quest line previously that asked you where your loyalties lie in the game, and it's supposed to have effects on the future of the game.
Quick question, Steve. Was this from when we chose to side with the Drifter, or this is another choice?
Same thing. The Drifter
Gotcha.
versus.
Oh, okay, so then,
Vanguard.
yeah.
So then they lead into the coolest part, which is getting darkness power and a new type of damage called stasis. So
yes.
It's been teased for a long time that like Guardians are essentially weapons of the light. Your power comes from the Traveler, which is like the beacon of the light. And now here we are all of a sudden where the darkness comes and they're like, hey, we're here to help you. And now you have this opportunity to get powers of darkness. Yeah, always cool guns, right?
And a new element type.
Stasis.
Which seems to be time/ice.
Are you sure we're not just doing dark side, light side? Here's a new thing. Let's make it neutral-ish.
No, because it's always been kind of like Destiny's story has always been in its grimoire and its background and its lore cards.
Yeah.
Where it's always hinted at being way more elaborate than you think it is.
Yeah.
And they've had story beats that have been like years in the making, right?
All right.
So they've given you like this
like
one lore card.
Unfolding of something you've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, it does. Does it feel like it took too long? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
reads
cool
more
that it's
like
happening? Yeah.
It reads more like you're reading the mythology of a world, and then the events of the actual game are like not quite aligned with that mythology, which kind of leads you to be like, oh, okay, I see. Like it's kind of like, Grandpa so and so tells me all about Jesus, and then I have
it's kind of weird and out of place because you have to go outside of the game to find all your information.
Which is something hopefully they get better as they go into the next 3 expansions that they announced during this thing.
I have to say, I can't understand why they make you why they still, assuming it's true, make you leave the game to do that shit, like the grimoire stuff.
I think it's just because they don't really have a way to implement past events. There's no way to how these things play out in time, or if it's just maybe something that they just don't have time to make because there's a lot.
Time to integrate, right? Like it's fair to say that it's easier to churn out content through a website and through those technologies rather than integrate them into the game, but like that is what other games do anyway.
So in speaking to that, one of their things for their roadmap for the future is actually something that I found really interesting was how they want to keep the game efficient. So they were talking about a lot of games now like Call of Duty and other games of that nature that are in excess of 100 gigabytes.
Jesus.
Right? On how much memory they take. So what Destiny is starting to do is they're going to start looping and revamping old content. So what they're going to do is they're going to take certain things out of the game that people don't play anymore and loop in things people want to play from the past that they really liked, other raids and things like that, and kind of cycle content to try and keep the size of the game smaller.
The Destiny content
continually-
vault, as they call it.
Yeah, without continually adding stuff into the game, making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like the idea of, because if you think about it,
Yeah.
they're bringing back the very first raid from Destiny 1, the Vault of
Mhm.
Glass, which I think was the pinnacle of their encounter
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
That was probably the best encounters I've ever played in the game. And just thinking about it, like, it's so much nostalgia with it, right?
They're bringing back Cosmodrome, the
Yeah, they're
original,
bringing back
one
a
of the
lot of
original locations.
Old content, and they said they're not trying to slap another number on a box and deliver a game like that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So they're going to keep supporting Destiny 2, and they're not going to do Destiny 3, which is good, because now you know, like, this is what they're going to stick with. And now that they're no longer part of Activision, it kind of gives me hope to see, because this is the stuff we're seeing now from this expansion Beyond Light to the next two. This is where we're going to see what
What are the names
they
of the
wanted
next
to
two?
do. The Witch Queen or something like that.
Witch Queen and then Lightfall.
Lightfall,
Lightfall. So Witch Queen is for 2021,
Right.
and then Lightfall is for 2022. And it seems like they're going to be consistent. Like they've held that September month release date
Yeah.
ever since. So we probably would expect everything to come out in September in the
Right.
following years.
So going
So-
into Beyond Light is the Darkness powers. Then you have the Witch Queen, which is Savathun, which is one of the Hive gods. And then into Lightfall, whatever story beats go into there.
Yeah, sounds
So
like the
it's-
light's going to be
It's
falling.
nice and ambitious as far as the story goes, and it seems like the gameplay will follow. I'm a little
Mhm.
concerned about if they never attempt to go to Destiny 3, like platform-wise, the graphics are just going to look more and more out of date, I would think.
Well, I mean,
Well,
their
that's not
roadmap is only
necessarily
a
the
couple
case.
years down the road, right? So I can't. The game is already very good looking.
Yeah.
You know,
And
I
there's
play it on
already-
PC now, so I have
Yeah.
the 60 frames, 1080,
Right.
whatever the
So
case may
once
be. It
you're-
looks fantastic.
When you're developing a live service game for PC, you can continuously push the envelope as far as what the graphic stuff goes, and there's no reason you can't have it scaled down to the
Right.
launch experience on the
Yeah.
lowest settings, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
And to
Yeah.
go back to it,
You might
you
eventually
have
want to deprecate some
like
kind of.
World of Warcraft as the comparison. You know, they've consistently updated the graphics in the game. You know, they've updated
Yeah.
the character models and stuff, and they've never had to
Mhm.
release another game behind it.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
been
so-
kind of
True.
like big patches.
More
you
to
know?
Stacey's
Yeah.
point, though, I do think that there are things you can do in a sequel that you can't do if you're just going to do it continuous. Particularly from Division 1 to Division 2, huge improvements. And it's the sort of thing that, frankly, I don't think they could have done bit by bit. They've revamped the whole goddamn UI. They redid enemy AI. Now, they might be able to do that piecemeal in Destiny, but it's harder.
Well, I think
mean,
as,
to their credit, it looks like right now. I mean, they're in a place right now where the UI, the gameplay, the enemy AI, it's all pretty good where it's at as far as difficulty and how hard it is to complete
And
encounters.
that's fair. I would not say that about Division 1.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, well, we've talked, Steve, about them actually. Just something we miss is that, remember, there's a PC port that is, superior to what's on the consoles now. So what's to say that the PS5 and the Xbox, they can just slap that code? I know not slap it over, but they already have a more, a higher fidelity port that they could just put over to the higher consoles. And, that'll most likely hold
Well,
over.
and
Now
particular,
that you mentioned that, there's one thing I want to touch on. Sorry, Zavi.
No, go
is
ahead.
that they did start talking about generational crossplay, which I think is interesting.
Oh.
So the generational crossplay is like if you have PS4 and your friend has a PS5, you both can still play together.
Nice.
So
good.
they said that they're implementing that within the next year, and then they commented on wanting to have crossplay with everybody
Cool.
in the
Nice.
future. And it's like, oh, we hope to have this, but it's always the console companies and them wanting the actual overlap.
Well, the last thing I'll say is when it comes to deploying the game that you've worked on to different platforms, the technology is only getting really, really better. And we actually do seem to be at an inflection point where the cost of deploying to arbitrarily good, what do you call it? PCs, like bad PCs and good PCs, like power-wise, is getting, the cost to doing that is getting very low, actually, because you can just deploy your highest resolution asset, and certain engines will just handle that shit.
Yeah.
So it's starting to get much simpler.
And even the pre-built machines are getting to the point where they're so affordable. It's almost like
That too.
buying a pre-built machine is almost better than buying a console because you're getting better
Because
better
we
hardware.
Make sure it all works out.
And you're getting modular hardware that you can upgrade down the line.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. So
Destiny 2, we're looking forward to supporting you for the next 2 years.
Are you coming back, Mikey?
On PS5, I'm gonna come back. I think once they
Alright.
put the updates, I'll put back. And if they're really working on crossplay, then that fixes. Oh, you're on PC, you're on that.
I was
mean,
actually talking to Rio
Crossplay is going to be
recently,
kind of big
and
on Destiny. Actually.
I
Rio
hope so.
completely deleted Destiny 2 from his PlayStation. He's like, I can never
Ooh.
go back. I was
Yeah.
like, for me, if my friends all decide they want to play on PlayStation, I'm gonna go play on PlayStation. It's gonna be where my
Yeah.
friends are because the graphical differences, it's pretty just it's
Yeah.
30
Eh.
frames
Well,
per
I just
second.
think
And it doesn't bother me that much.
the pressure of these big profile games just becoming cross-play, like it's time Destiny 2.
Hey,
Like
Fortnite's
Fortnite's
started it.
doing it.
Credit where it's due.
Yeah,
The world's ready.
Rocket League is doing
Yeah.
it, has done it. So like, if
No
you want to be
excuses.
Destiny 2, if you want to be the game that everybody plays,
They need to do
you gotta
that
jump
thing.
in.
What
Yeah.
company? What game was it where they just accidentally flipped the switch and revealed?
It was Rocket.
I think it was Rocket League.
Yeah.
I think it
Did
was
it
Rocket
for
League,
like
right?
2
They were
hours
just like,
or
And then
something.
PlayStation was
That
like,
was
no,
great.
no, you can't do that. And they were like,
And they're like,
We
turn
kinda
the
did.
switch off.
That's what I think Bungie
Right.
should do. They should be like, oops.
Yeah,
oops.
that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah. So, did I
We're
do
all
that?
so we're all excited about PS5, I think. But if we chop off that S, I think Mikey has some stuff he'd like to talk about.
You and your freaking segues.
been
So
pretty
this will
on
How
probably
you
the
even
last.
came up with that one?
How
Anyway,
did you practice these?
I don't know. He looks in the mirror before I even wake up in the morning, apparently. and
How long
just-
you been sitting on all these segues?
Yeah. So Persona 5 Royal, this will probably be the last time I mention it because I finally completed it, all 120 hours of it.
Ooh,
Yes, I mean, it's not like we had a lot of time on our hands.
This is
So-
true.
Speak for
The time
yourself.
of
I
game
still
like
work
that.
in the Bronx every day.
man.
But no, I'm not in the Bronx. I'm just in Tokyo. But yeah, I finished Persona 5
Oh.
Royal, and I want to say that it was even more fantastic than the first time. I'm not going to relitigate the whole first game. It was great. The only issue I have with it is that because of the extra sort of like extra content and extra time to do things, for me, the game, turned out to be a lot easier than the first time. And it's just like, the stress of not having to refill your MP enough because there were so many options to refill your MP. And me just knowing the game, I guess, the Shin Megami Tensei framework and battle system, I kind of flew through it a little bit faster than I wanted to. But as far as the extra content goes, and I'm just gonna have a little bit of spoilers, you really get into the true nature of your new party member Kazumi and what her story is, and they kind of changed things in a really intense way. And like, I have to talk around spoilers because like for people who want to play it, like when you get to it, it's kind of like, okay, I didn't see that coming. They introduce an enemy that I don't know if you want to call an enemy. It's really easy when we talk about these games to have good guy, bad guy. This is good, this is bad. Arbiters of good, arbiters of chaos. But then they sort of introduce a new type of antagonist that's like, is this bad really? I mean, yeah.
I like
So
relatable antagonists. That's why I think Thanos
yeah,
did nothing
no,
wrong.
very relatable antagonist. And
Steve, think a little harder on that. But
He didn't. We
Yeah.
only have finite resources. We have
Yeah.
to preserve them if we're going to preserve life in the universe.
I'm gonna send you some articles after.
Send me all you want.
No, go on, Persona.
but yeah, it had me really sort of thinking about the choices as humans we make, the choices that we think we have, sort of where we put, I don't want to use the word that, but what we value happiness to be,
Cognitive biases that lead you down to your choices.
and the work
Yeah.
it takes to be happy, and
The search for meaning
choices we
versus
make
the
to be
search for
happy.
pleasure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really as far as I can get because I actually don't want to spoil it. But I guess one of the negatives I could say about this is that, well, if you want to see all of that, it takes about 60 hours, 70 hours to get there. So
Yeah, it seems odd that like,
there
that
is
this
such
sort
a
of
thing as too much game.
So
Yeah,
all of
like
the
I
additional stuff.
understand some people are just, they're big fans. They want to go through the game a second time and all that. I just
Yeah,
think that specifically with Persona, who's the publisher again? It's
Atlas.
Atlas.
Atlas, yeah.
Atlas is being pretty grubby here. This could be DLC, and don't tell me it couldn't, right?
Mm,
Like,
So wait, let me just ask a question because I think I missed all the discussion previously. Is that the new stuff takes place after the main game that you
So
would buy
you
Persona 5
okay?
normally?
So let me go through some of the new stuff. So you have two new social links. One of the social links plays into the story in a really good way. His name is Takuro Maruki, and he's a school counselor. And if you remember Persona, basically the game is about how adults abuse children.
Mhm.
So, it was really nice that the school hired a counselor. So it fit really nicely into the story. So you get a
It
social link
makes
of
me
your.
worried that you're playing as a villain a little bit, honestly.
No, no,
No, thank goodness.
no, you're kids.
You're
So you
kids,
didn't do
so you're
anything.
high
Yeah.
school kids, so you're
Yeah.
actually the good guys.
So when there's lots of cutscenes where each of the characters speak to him about what has happened to him, and then of course there's your
Wow.
social link with him as well. The
Right.
second social link is Kazumi Yoshizawa, which she is a new party member, and you are able to start a social link with her, but you don't get to play with her until the new semester. So you just get snippets of her, snippets of her, snippets of her, and she's a really fantastic character. Like I ended up romancing her because like she's just so cool. Like she's a fantastic character. So I actually,
So
romanced her.
I kind of agree with Zavi there. Then, like, why couldn't you just make this a DLC?
Well, because they, yeah, yeah,
it depends on how you slice
yeah,
and dice it, right? So you alluded to the fact that, for example, as a fundamental change, they made it easier to get MP back, right?
yeah. Well, that's not. I mean, that could have been. So there's a little bit of a graphical upgrade. Um, they did change quite a. They changed little things of your daily sort of game flow.
Mm.
Talking to you now, it kind of seems like, yeah, maybe it could have been
Like
DLC.
I said, it's fair that some
Yeah,
people want to replay this. I don't know how hard it is to make some of these changes and everything, but we have seen similar things get patched into games,
Yeah,
yeah,
literally for free.
but
And
yeah,
we've seen
yeah,
I guess
extra
it's just
story segments
going.
be
It's
DLC.
going back down the
And
route of
Atlas does
like
this a lot.
of
yeah,
like
Right.
it's
yeah,
it's the standard DLC debate, right? Like,
yeah,
is this DLC or is it additional game? And that's a debate that's going to keep raging for the rest of
yeah,
time as
That's
long as
been
games
going
are being
yeah,
on
made.
from the beginning. I
yeah.
Yeah,
mean, as
I
Plenty,
soon
will
as you
plenty
say
could
the
arbitrage
download
on it.
interest
content
is
online,
the
this
interest
became a
is
new.
there. I think it sold better initially than the original game, if I'm not mistaken,
Really?
or did
Wow.
really, really well. So the
Huh.
Nice.
interest is there. I mean, as much as
To some
Sega
extent, though,
did
that might
buy.
be people knowing to wait.
Yeah, Sega did
yeah.
buy Atlas, so I
That's
don't
not
want to say
great
like
though.
Atlas is a small company, but it is a subsidiary of Sega now. But Atlas is very like, one of the things I love about Atlas is that their logistics department is amazing. They don't make too many of anything. It's like,
They don't.
hey, we know who our fans are, we know they're gonna buy it, and I think that's one of the testaments why they've been around for so long. So as much as I want to say like, how many games does Atlas proper makes a year? And if this is their premier franchise, I'm not hating it on so much. Yes, I am a fan and I am biased about it, but if you missed out the first time, this is a game from 3 years ago, so it wasn't like, oh, this came out last year and we're remaking it
Yeah.
right now. So yeah, I do get both arguments, but I think the package still stands as it is, and I think it's definitely everyone to get to it, especially if you didn't play the original game. Like this is definitely the definitive version of it,
Because
and
Yeah,
it
I don't
makes the
actually.
ending really cool.
I'm not actually as critical as I maybe am letting on. Like I
yeah,
wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah,
bring it
yeah.
up, but I think that Atlas they
Hey, you
have a
moved me,
hell of a
Zavi. After you
they have a
asked me, I was
hell of a
like, hey.
niche. They have a hell of a niche, and
Yeah,
they support it pretty damn well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't see the point in trying to like paint that broad of a brush and
yeah.
go, oh,
I
it should
mean,
be DLC. It's like Japan in general doesn't do DLC the way we do, so
right.
That's true.
yeah.
That's
And
absolutely true.
if you look at like the release date for Persona games, I mean, Persona 4 Golden was 2012, right? Persona 5 was 2016.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Here
this
you
isn't
are,
FIFA
20. What is it?
yeah,
2020. It was a 2020
yeah,
launch, right?
yeah. That's why I said,
Persona 5 Royal.
just
So
remember what kind of
or
company
unless you're
Atlas
someone
is.
who's like loves buying games on sale
Mm-hmm.
and you got Persona 5 on sale really cheap,
Mm-hmm.
like you would have heard buzz about this game, especially if it's something that's in your wheelhouse.
Definitely.
No, Persona 4 Golden actually just came out on Steam.
Yeah,
Now-
it did.
Huh.
Thanks for
now-
mentioning it. Yeah.
I completely lied to you, Mikey, and did not keep track of time while you were talking.
Oh.
So I don't know how long we've been talking about Persona 5.
I mean, I
Still
am.
Still got a
you
few
know,
minutes left.
excuse me. I will say, kind of not wanting to talk about spoilers sort of hinders it. I did want to talk about, just to sort of get a last minute, what is it, spotlight on it, because we have a lot of things to talk about. Things are coming out. It's fall's coming up. We have Last of Us 2. We have Ghosts of Tsushima. We have Captain Tsubasa.
The hell's that?
Oh
Alright,
my
forget about
gosh,
that.
I'll show you the trailer after, and you're gonna be
Alright.
like, you can throw FIFA in the garbage because you're gonna want to play as Captain Tsubasa.
Just one quick thing.
Exactly. Look at your face. Look at that
Okay.
face.
I'm
Okay, I don't know the
surprised.
FIFA, but okay.
I'm surprised nobody mentioned Stray from the PS5 event, where you play
Yeah.
a stray cat in a world of
Oh
robots.
yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah,
looks dope
yeah,
as
yeah,
fuck.
yeah.
I had that on my list actually, and maybe I should have included it. But it's another one of those that it feels more in touch with our dystopian times than
Yeah.
any of the
Well,
the
it's
shinier.
another.
It's like literally
A cat watching
robot,
humans kill each
a
other.
robot
Yeah.
underclass, and this poor little cat that's
It's an
trying to help each
Annapurna game,
other.
so those tend to
Yeah.
have like some
Yeah.
really neat like story
Yeah.
beats. Like Florence was super good, and that was an
Yeah.
Annapurna game on mobile.
Florence. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
And
I
I
really
would
like
play that.
Annapurna.
It
I
was
really
nice to
do.
see Annapurna Interactive put something out that looked more high budget than their
Yeah.
usual stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Seems like they're
Definitely.
growing. That's
So
And
if-
it's an
exciting.
interesting way to kind of deal with the diversity problem in games, is to make a cat your protagonist.
Exactly.
People love cats. The internet loves cats.
The internet loves cats.
Yeah, it's like review bomb this. I dare you.
Go ahead, bully the cat. See how everyone likes it.
You have the wrath of the
see,
internet.
see if the cat gives a shit.
Cool.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
So I
Uh,
think we're up on our final topic for today.
Speaking
and
of dystopian futures,
Yes.
Speaking
Yes.
of review bombing.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So I decided to play a little bit of Last of Us Remastered. As
a little
we're-
bit or all of it.
A little bit. We didn't go ahead and finish it. I was playing along while Stacy was watching for a bit, but then I felt conflicted about whether to pick up Last of Us 2. I chose not to buy it on Friday and see how things went a little bit, and then
And I
Stacy
went
decided
and
to buy
researched
it.
it and said, wait a minute, let me
This
go.
seems interesting. Take my
Yeah,
money.
yeah. Well,
There's
yeah, because here's the thing. Like where I land on this is there's some people that are very much game mechanic purists. They want a good game, and the story is nice to have, but not need to have. And I'm just the opposite of that. I really want a good story in my game. A
Mhm.
pure mechanics, racking up points and levels, is going to bore me within 20 minutes tops. So for me, it's all about the story.
Let's be
And
clear though. You also love Doom, so don't pretend like
Yeah,
I think it
yeah,
depends.
Stacy. Yeah, Stacy.
Yeah.
fair.
I think it depends on what you're
Doom is
looking
just
for.
fucking funny though, man.
it is very
There
funny.
is room in the world for slapstick funny.
Yeah, I think when
Yeah.
it comes down to it, it depends on what kind of game you're looking for at any given moment. Because
And it needs to be a holistic thing.
Yeah,
Right.
like where you are at any given point in time determines what kind of game, like in your
Right.
mental space, is going to determine
Right.
what kind of game you're looking for.
So
Yeah.
I knew that The Last of Us was going to be bombed because we're clearly featuring a lesbian relationship, and that's going to freak some people out. It appears there's some kind of trans
It was in the
character. I still
DLC,
don't know what's
whatever.
up about that, but that's going to freak some people out. And just in general, the fact that the former protagonist, Joel, is a grizzled old man, I can see how your power fantasy teenage boys might not
Yeah,
like
it's like
that
Metal
very
Gear
much.
4.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mentioned
So-
it, so this is entirely my fault, but I don't in any way want to talk about the review bombing because the sky is blue and games that feature anything that is unusual to
Right.
those assholes gets review bombed. So who gives a
The
shit?
sky is blue and games are subjective.
Right. So
This
my point
is how the
is,
first game makes me feel.
I still
yeah.
don't
So.
get it. I still don't know where you're going. You did this before, and I still don't know where you're going with it. So I need you to
So
elaborate.
the problem with The Last of Us 1 is actually a very, very well crafted story. But right at the end, there's kind of an agency problem.
I think so too. So I want to go through it a bit more in order. So we played up until round when the hunters start getting introduced before you meet Henry and Sam, and then we watch some YouTube videos. back when I played it the first time, I was much younger. This was PlayStation 3 era.
I mean, it was 7 years ago, right? That's
Yeah,
2013, right?
Really?
I think so.
Wow.
it's
It's
an
an old
old
Shit.
game,
game.
man.
It's a
So,
classic
so
now.
I
'Cause it
remember
was
playing through the
PS3.
first one. I remember playing through the first one, and back then I just didn't have the same sensibility for this kind of stuff that I do now, or just a different sensitivity, because that's just the way that being a human works. The When I first played it, it landed as a mostly just like gritty story, blah blah. The thing that interested me was actually the realistic mechanics. Things such as the fact that on a controller, with the weapon swaying continuously, you actually need to line up the shot like within that circle, and the animations for the enemies are erratic.
Yeah.
So normally a game would hold your hand a little bit with some kind of auto hitting or something like that. The Last of Us did not. It was like, you need to line up your shot, and if you don't, then melee or something else. And if you fuck up, you're gonna fucking die, period. If you let a clicker get on you and you don't have a shiv, you're gonna fucking die. If a
And
runner gets on you and you have low enough health, you can't struggle out of that encounter, you're gonna
right.
fucking die.
And on top of that, they made you be aware of your resources because you had very limited bullets that you could hold.
So
While
I'm
you didn't
playing
find a lot of them, you could only hold like 10.
and
You
I'm
know?
playing the first game on the grounded difficulty that they added
Right.
in. So I don't have listening mode. Resources are stupid scarce.
You don't even
And
have a UI to tell you how much health you have.
I think I actually chose to turn a lot of that off, but
That's
because I'm a
ridiculous.
psycho. But
Yeah, you are a psycho.
it's a fun experiment for me to always just try to be like as immersive as possible and see how that feels. Back when you're talking about a remastering of a PS3 game, they don't exactly have like the animation system in place to give you clues about the person's health in a realistic fashion. So the health bar is actually helpful. But I like not knowing how many rounds I have in the gun, so that I have to keep track of it in my head. I like being that kind of like that kind of panic that can happen when you don't have when you don't have God information. It's part of why I didn't really like listening mode in Last of Us Part One, and grounded mode is interesting because I have to use my actual human ears. But playing through, it still holds up. It's still really really good. I do think that that first game is pretty timeless. Like I don't see these mechanics, these crafting, like these levels. I don't see them getting old. I really don't. And then to get into the story, it's pretty goddamn good, particularly because there's a and this is where I think it's funny to think of the difference from 7 years ago to now. Like they just don't treat you like a kid. The world is brutal, but they don't necessarily show more than they need to. It's part of why when a runner gets to you, they'll bite you, and then you have the escalation of him yelling and the music making the sound, and then cut to black, because they actually aren't trying to be um, torture porn.
Yeah.
They're
Torture.
they're
Yeah,
they're
they're
actually
not
not trying to
being
do that.
gore just for
Yeah.
the sake of itself.
Yeah,
Really.
and
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
have this developing relationship. It obviously kicks off with Joel losing his daughter as everything goes to shit.
The most
Uh,
heartbreaking thing in that game.
oh my god, that game opens and you're playing as this little girl, and it's just like, you're not the girl from the box. You're
Yeah.
gonna fucking die. And
Yeah.
it's a well done scene. It was moving.
Yeah.
You get the little bits of interaction, and specifically, you get Joel getting his watch. Flash forward in time, his watch is broken. It's one of these symbols that he occasionally looks at, and it's clear that the watch doesn't work. So whenever he's looking at it, it's like this signal of like remembering his daughter. And sometimes it seems like he's not even aware that he's doing it, like when he
Yeah,
interacts with
I don't think
Ellie
he
and he
does.
like occasionally just moves his wrists like almost unconsciously.
Right. It's almost more the way somebody would look at a compass to try and keep going the right direction. It's like he's
That's
looking at
fair.
this watch and trying to decide how to handle Ellie, who is a handful.
Hmm.
And he thinks about what he would have done if his daughter had acted
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
So as you progress through that story, I feel like you have this series of encounters with different characters and how they do and don't survive this world, right? You have
Right.
Bill, who has isolated himself so insanely to the point where like who we are heavily clued into is essentially his partner hated him and got bit while trying to run away from him. He successfully isolated himself from everyone and everything. He's alive, but what the fuck is his life? Then you have Sam and you have his older brother Henry, who you meet and they seem like decent people, and it's a very much a parallel to Ellie and Joel. And
Only Henry is way nicer, honestly.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then bad luck happens as it kind of can, and Sam gets bit turns. Henry, in that moment, just offs himself and flash forward in time, right? Ellie's essentially depressed, and this is probably a long period of time afterwards, still trying to find the fireflies because, of course, key thing, Ellie has been and immune and all that. Next thing that we encounter is in Jackson, his brother. And you have this sense of, oh, here's Joel's previous life and all this. And he's literally trying to get Ellie off his back. He's literally going like, brother, you take her from here. I don't want to do this anymore. And then Tommy initially is like, no, I can't do this, until he sees how much that Joel cares about Ellie when the attack happens. And he's like, fuck, okay, I have to do this because I can't let my brother essentially go through this twice.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the back and forth where Ellie runs away, and then instead Joel goes, okay, fine, I'm going to fucking do it. Tommy, go home to your wife. Finally, we reach the last leg of the game. You find the fireflies, and you learn, dun, 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 they need to kill Ellie if they're going to try to find some kind of cure. And this is,
At least that's what they think.
even back, yeah, even back all those years ago, this was the part that I thought was the narratively interesting thing. Up until then, I was just sort of going through the motions, gameplay back then. Going through it the second time, knowing what's going on, I was trying to keep my mind on whether there's a right and wrong here, whether there's a good choice to be made here. And the way that the game frames it is, Joel's not going to lose Ellie. I'm going to kill all these people and rescue her and get out of here.
Right.
And it kind of frames Joel as a bit of a villain at the end, particularly for lying to Ellie.
What's
But
best for Joel is clearly it's not what's best for the greater good for the world as a whole.
Hypothetically, right? We don't know how much they'd be able to actually figure anything out.
Right,
but
and we don't know if the fireflies are just full of it and they're about to off somebody for no reason. I mean, so there's that.
Ultimately, I think that like this turns into something that I don't typically like in stories, which is everyone sucks. So the fireflies kind of suck because they don't give anyone a choice per se here. They don't ask Joel, they don't ask Ellie what they want, or even like treat them kindly per se. Maybe they're a revolution group on their last legs. I don't know. We don't see enough of them. And then on the other hand, Joel is just so much of a I'm the father, I protect the kid at all costs, I don't care what I have to do, and like, so he does that, and he does it selfishly, and he lies to Ellie and so on and so forth. And Ellie is just sort of there, which feels weird and bad, not because it's unrealistic per se, but just because like this is a story that you're choosing to tell me. You're choosing to set things up a certain way. And it's okay to have an ambiguous ending, which leaves you with whose side are you on and that sort of thing. But I think that, and this is one tiny thing just from reviews I've read, not what I've played of part 2, I think that it actually kind of shines a light on the type of stories that they're actually interested in telling that I don't care about. I'm pretty sure from what I've read that eventually part 2 is going to turn into everyone sucks and just wants to like be dicks to each other all the time. And while we're in this current historical moment, people are actually being pretty fucking excellent to each other. Like, sure, there's loud sounds outside and that sort of thing, but like communities are helping each other. And these stories have no interest in these eventualities from what I can tell. So with Last of Us Part 1, great gameplay, great realism. I like the mechanics. I want to see other games try to take these kind of approaches to mechanics, the scarcity of the ammo, crafting in place so that it's actually real intention. The stealth versus detection is pretty good. Like, all that stuff is
they've
nice.
made some real improvements.
Just don't turn that into an excuse to essentially just Call of Duty me and just be like, this is why you need to be a strong person and be ready to kill. And then also don't baby me and go, but killing is bad and you should really think hard about your kill. Like, it just feels,
there's no gray area. It's just boring.
Like, the best part of post-apocalypses in my mind is like the little shreds of hope. And maybe the reviews I've read will be misleading and part 2, whatever. But I genuinely think that like part 1 is very good because it makes you think about shit. But it also, the way it frames the ending is not particularly
so we were discussing this at that final moment when Joel goes into the operating room and he sees Ellie on the table, and there are 3 people in the room involved in the operation. One of the doctors takes out a scalpel, and you have only the option that you let Joel die or you kill the doctor. There is no other way to resolve that conflict. And I think in some ways that's just like heartbreaking as a
Mm.
player. You can totally see that doctor's
Yeah.
point of view and why he thinks he's right. And by any reasonable understanding of game mechanics, Joel ought to be able to kick that doctor's ass.
Yeah.
Seriously. But
There's no conversation, it
you
sounds
won't-
like, at all.
yeah. Right, and I almost would have been okay if there had been almost a dialogue between the player and Joel, the fictional character, where the player could try and make moves to not make that mistake, but Joel would just eventually overturn the player's decision to be like, nah, fuck this, I'm saving the girl.
Yeah, like Metal
And
Gear's done that better. Spec Ops: The Line did that
but
better.
instead, it makes you, the player, press the button to kill the doctor, or the game.
Even though you don't want to do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I didn't love that, and I'm a little worried about that kind of scenario happening again with the second one.
Yeah.
But I do have hope in that they're clearly attempting to show you both sides of the story more and
Yes.
show in greater depth how people can be led towards revenge and what other options there might be. So I have hope
Yeah,
that
my
it will
hope
be
too.
smarter than that.
My hope too, because I think I share that hope too, because I think that part of the weakness in retrospect of the perspective of The Last of Us Part 1 is that you mostly just get Joel and a little bit of Ellie. There's insinuations of how terrible people are and the bad things that Joel has done and everything, but you really can't help as a designer that when you put the player in someone's shoes, they're going to see from their perspective.
Yeah.
So that's
I mean,
maybe
one could
a lesson
argue that
here.
they corrected or they addressed it or they expanded it with the Left Behind expansion, where
True,
you
the
are
DLC one too.
Ellie, so you can actually have her perspective, and you can sort of synthesize that in. Okay, I'm adding this perspective in with the overall, franchise or overall IP or story of the original game to say, okay, because I had this perspective of Joel, I'm only getting fed certain information and, sort of manipulated into feeling a certain way. Now I have Ellie. Yes, it's a different circumstance, but I can sort of glean what was she thinking in this moment? How was she feeling in this moment? And now we have the second part to say, okay, she is the main character. This is going to be from her perspective.
Yeah.
How retrospectively, how did she feel about the first
Yeah.
game?
Right.
And
Well,
how is she going to lead her life as someone who experienced that?
I at least hope we won't end up in a situation where you've got a character unconscious and you're having to make a decision for that character and you don't honestly know what they would want if
Yeah.
they had the choice.
Yeah.
Like, we will have been in different characters' heads enough, I hope, that we can at least guess what the actual character would want to do in that moment,
Yeah.
whether we
Good
agree
point.
with it or not.
Good point. Good
we'll see.
point.
And
All
next
right.
week we'll be talking more
About Last of Us Part
Part
2.
2.
Definitely.
Forward to
First
it.
So
impressions coming.
hopefully all of us get through it and we're able to have a full discussion.
I doubt it.
I know what I've heard is
25
that
hours.
the game is just like it's longer than it and then
Needs to be.
people
So it's
well not
running
even
in
needs to be just
from
than
from
you
what
think it
it's
is.
There's
from
some
what I'm
optional
reading, it's
stuff for
running
sure.
an average of about 30
30
hours.
hours, yeah, that's what I've
I'm
heard.
not rushing through it.
I'm
just
not
No,
either.
no.
So
Yeah.
here's what I foresee, because I'm 10 hours in now, but that's just this weekend. I
Yeah.
foresee that this week, during the week after work, I will not be playing at all because I will be mentally exhausted, and Last of Us taxes my emotions and my brain.
Yeah.
Fair.
So it probably won't be until the weekend where I hit it again, and then I'll probably even then won't even be halfway through. So
Okay.
it's all
Right.
dependent on
Cool. I think we'll still discuss, what we've played,
Yeah.
Yeah, we
definitely
can
Yeah,
definitely
play
talk
this by
about the
ear.
gameplay systems and how
Yeah.
they've changed and how they
Yeah.
haven't and all that. So
because I like to scavenge, so I like to look around. I like to search every building I can.
Yeah.
And a lot of the game is in those buildings and little letters that you can find about
Yes.
Oh
minor
yeah,
characters.
yeah.
So that even the
world
minor
building is
characters you never
fantastic.
even get to know, you still
Yeah.
kind of do know them.
There's just a
you've
lot
seen
of
their
little
history.
things about the game that I really
all right,
like, and I
This
have
is-
been
this
taking
is
notes.
only
So
a
I'll have
preview,
stuff
guys. We got to save them something
for
for
Yeah.
next week.
Okay. Cool,
Fair
cool,
enough.
cool. All right, guys.
So Steve,
This
do you
is
have the script
very
in front of you?
great.
No, I actually thought you were going to do the outro because
I'll do the outro. It's all
I
good.
had the big bombastic intro, and I figure you like to do the outro to guide everybody out.
All right, we good, everyone? Sound
We
good?
are absolutely good.
All right, then that's where we're gonna leave it. We are Potty Chat Peoples. Steve, welcome back. Stacy,
Thanks.
Mikey, thanks again.
Yes.
And
Our socials are up.
our socials are up: Facebook and Instagram and
Yes.
Twitter.
We've got lovely banners and stuff.
We've got
Yeah.
lovely
In case you
banners.
haven't noticed.
Yeah.
We will be pushing out
We
content
have
to
some
the
artistic
socials.
friends. I claim
Yes.
no credit for any of this.
Yes, thank you, MG Edits, for this lovely, lovely background and video.
Word.
Yeah, so
But I
keep.
think that's where we can leave it.
All right, later.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.